Gyeongbok Palace gleamed under the golden twilight, its red ceramic tiles reflecting the last rays of autumn sun. Crimson paper lanterns swayed gently in the evening breeze, casting dancing shadows across the polished wooden corridors. The fragrance of chrysanthemums and sandalwood incense hung in the air, mingling with the distant sound of gyeogeum echoing through the inner courtyard. Prince Lee Jae-han, at 23, walked alone through the palace's secret gardens, his navy silk hanbok flowing with each step. His long black hair was loosely tied, rebellious strands framing his angular face. A black silk mask covered the lower half of his face, revealing only his dark, intense eyes that carried the weight of a secret threatening to destroy his lineage. 3 years of marriage, 3 years of frustrated hopes, 3 years of whispers in the palace corridors about his supposed sterility. The royal physician had been clear. His chances of producing an heir were almost non-existent. And now, with growing pressure from the royal council to take a concubine, Jihan felt like a prisoner in his own kingdom. Lost in dark thoughts, he didn't notice the delicate figure kneeling among the white peonies until he nearly stumbled over her. "Forgive me, Your Highness." The voice was soft as silk, filled with genuine surprise. Jihan looked down and met the most luminous eyes he had ever seen. The young woman, she couldn't be more than 18, was kneeling among the flowers, her delicate hands holding a basket of medicinal herbs. Her simple white cotton hanbok contrasted with the surrounding opulence, but there was something about her presence that made all the palace luxury seem unnecessary. "You shouldn't be here," he said, but his voice carried no reprimand. Instead, there was curiosity. "These gardens are private." The young woman rose gracefully, keeping her eyes lowered in respect, but Jihan could see the delicate blush that colored her cheeks. "I work in the herb gardens, Highness. The royal physician sent me to gather wild ginseng for Your Highness's treatment." The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Both knew which treatment she referred to. Jihan felt a mixture of shame and something else. Something he couldn't identify, as he looked at this young woman who spoke of his condition without judgment, only with the naturalness of someone who understood plants and their healing powers. "What is your name?" he asked, surprising himself with the question. "Sujin, Highness. Kim Sujin." "Sujin," he repeated, and the name sounded like a prayer on his. "Do you believe in the power of these herbs?" She finally raised her eyes to meet his, and Jihan felt as if the world had stopped. There was wisdom in those dark eyes, an understanding that went beyond her years. "I believe nature has its own mysteries, Highness. Sometimes, what physicians consider impossible, the earth considers merely dormant." In the weeks that followed, Jihan found himself returning to the secret gardens every night. There was always an excuse: checking security, meditating under the stars, escaping court pressures. But the truth was, he hoped to find Su Jin among the plants, her skillful hands gathering flowers under moonlight. And she was always there. "You shouldn't come here every night," she said one evening, while preparing an herbal infusion on a small portable brazier. The full moon bathed the garden in silver, transforming her into an ethereal vision. "People will talk. Let them talk," Jihan replied, sitting on the stone ground beside her, completely forgetting royal protocol. "For the first time in years, I feel alive." Sujin paused in her work, her eyes meeting his. "Your Highness carries too heavy a burden for someone so young." "Jihan," he said softly. "Here, just Jihan." She smiled, not a forced courteous smile, but something genuine and warm that made his heart race. "Jihan," she repeated, and his name had never sounded so beautiful. They began talking about everything and nothing, about the stars Jihan studied in his astronomical tower, about the plants Sujin cultivated in her small village garden, about dreams that seemed impossible to reach. She told him about her orphan childhood, raised by her herbalist grandmother, who taught her the secrets of medicinal plants. He spoke about the loneliness of being a prince, about the weight of expectations and the fear of failure. "You are not a failure," she said one night, when he confessed his deepest fears. You are a man with a pure heart in a world that values only results. What if I can never give the kingdom an heir? He asked, his voice breaking slightly. Sujin hesitantly extended her hand, lightly touching his gloved one. The touch was electric, sending waves of warmth throughout Jihan's body. Then you will find other ways to leave your legacy. A king is not defined only by his children, but by how he touches the lives of his people. That night, under the autumn moon, something shifted between them. What had begun as chance encounters became intentional meetings. What had started as curiosity became something deeper, more dangerous. The annual Harvest Moon Festival arrived with unprecedented splendor. The palace courtyards were decorated with thousands of lotus-shaped lanterns, their warm light creating a magical atmosphere. The sound of traditional drums echoed through the halls as nobles gathered in their finest silk hanboks, the women's joggery shimmering with gold embroidery. Jihan stood on the main pavilion balcony, watching the festivities below. His ceremonial hanbok was deep purple with golden dragon embroidery, and his long hair was formally arranged with a jade crown. But despite his regal appearance, his eyes searched the crowd for one particular face. "Your Highness seems distracted tonight," observed Minister Park, approaching with a knowing smile. "Perhaps you're thinking about the new concubine candidates the council has selected." Jihan's jaw tightened behind his mask. "I have made my position clear on that matter. The kingdom needs an heir, Highness. Your condition requires us to explore all possibilities." Before Jihan could respond, a commotion in the gardens caught his attention. Through the silk screens, he could see palace guards surrounding someone near the lotus pond. His blood ran cold when he recognized the simple white hanbok. "Excuse me," he said curtly, leaving the minister behind. He found Sujin kneeling by the pond, her herb basket overturned, precious medicinal plants scattered on the ground. Two guards stood over her, their expressions stern. "What is the meaning of this?" Jihan's voice carried royal authority that made everyone freeze. "Your Highness," one guard bowed quickly. "We found this servant in the restricted gardens during the festival. She claims to be gathering herbs, but—" "She is under my direct protection," Jihan interrupted, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Release her immediately." The guard stepped back, confused but obedient. Sujin remained kneeling, her face pale with fear and embarrassment. Jihan could see tears threatening to spill from her eyes, and something fierce and protective awakened in his chest. "Everyone, leave us," he commanded. When they were alone, he knelt beside her, gently helping her gather the scattered herbs. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but a single tear escaped down her cheek. "I'm sorry, Jihan. I shouldn't have come tonight. I wanted to prepare a special tea for you. Tomorrow is your birthday, and I thought..." She had remembered his birthday. In all the court preparations and formal ceremonies, she had remembered the one day he always dreaded. Another year older, another year without fulfilling his royal duty. "Sujin," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Without thinking, he reached up and removed his mask, revealing his full face for the first time. "Look at me." She raised her eyes, and her breath caught. Even in the moonlight, she could see the sharp line of his jaw, the full lips that had been hidden, the vulnerability in his expression that the mask had concealed. "You are the most beautiful man I have ever seen," she whispered, then immediately blushed at her boldness. Something broke inside Jihan at her words. For so long, he had hidden behind masks, literal and metaphorical. But with her, he felt seen, truly seen, for who he was rather than what he represented. "Sujin," he said, his voice barely audible. "I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hung between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. She stared at him, her eyes wide with wonder and fear. "Your Highness, Jihan, we cannot. You are a prince, destined to marry for the kingdom. I am nobody, just a girl who tends herbs." "You are everything," he said fiercely, taking her hands in his. You are the only person who sees me as a man rather than a title. You are the only one who makes me believe I might be worthy of love despite my inadequacies. You have no inadequacies, she said firmly. You have challenges, but they do not define your worth. The festival music swelled around them, drums and flutes, creating a symphony that seemed to celebrate this moment of truth between them. Lanterns reflected on the pond's surface like fallen stars. And in that magical setting, Jihan made a decision that would change everything. "Marry me," he said suddenly. Sujin's eyes widened in shock. "Jihan, you cannot be serious. The court, your family, the kingdom. I am the crown prince. I have the right to choose my bride." His voice was steady now, filled with determination. "I would rather have one night of true love with you than a lifetime of duty without it." "But what about heirs? What about your legacy?" Jihan smiled, and it was the first genuinely happy expression she had ever seen on his face. "You said it yourself. Sometimes what physicians consider impossible, nature considers merely dormant. And even if we never have children, I would rather spend my life with you than produce heirs with someone I cannot love." The wedding ceremony was held in secret 3 days later in the palace's ancient ancestral temple. Only the high priest and Sujin's elderly grandmother were present as witnesses. Red and gold silk draped the altar, and the air was heavy with the scent of jasmine and burning incense. Sujin wore a traditional joggery in deep red silk with gold embroidery, a gift from Jihan's personal seamstress. Her long black hair was arranged in the elaborate style of a royal bride, adorned with jade and pearl ornaments. But it was the expression in her eyes, love, trust, and unwavering faith that took Jihan's breath away. Jihan himself wore white and gold, his hair formally arranged with the crown prince's ceremonial ornaments. For the first time in years he felt truly regal, not because of his title, but because he was choosing love over duty, authenticity over expectation. "Do you, Prince Li Jihan, take Kim Sujin as your wife, to honor and cherish above all others?" "I do," Jihan said, his voice ringing clear in the sacred space. "I choose her above crown, above kingdom, above my own life. Do you, Kim Sujin, take Prince Li Jihan as your husband, to stand beside him through all trials?" Sujin's voice was soft but unwavering. "I do. I choose to love him not as a prince, but as the man who showed me that true nobility comes from the heart." When they drank from the shared cup of ceremonial wine, Jihan felt as if he was tasting life itself for the first time. When they bowed together before the ancestral tablets, he felt the blessing of generations who had also chosen love over convention. But it was later, in the privacy of Jihan's chambers, that the true magic happened. The room was softly lit by dozens of candles, their warm glow dancing across silk screens painted with cherry blossoms. Rose petals were scattered across the floor, and the air was perfumed with sandalwood and jasmine. Jihan had dismissed all servants, wanting this night to be theirs alone. "Are you nervous?" he asked gently, seeing Sujin's hands tremble slightly as she sat on the edge of the silk-covered bed. "A little," she admitted. "Not of you, but of disappointing you. What if the physicians are right? What if nothing happens?" Jihan knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "Sujin, look at me. You could never disappoint me. Tonight is not about creating heirs or fulfilling royal duties. Tonight is about two people who love each other expressing that love in the most intimate way possible." He reached up and gently removed the ornaments from her hair, letting it fall in waves around her shoulders. "You are so beautiful," he whispered. "Not just your face, but your spirit, your kindness, your strength." "Jihan," she whispered back, reaching up to touch his face. "I love you. Not the prince, not the title, but you. The man who sits with me in gardens and shares his fears. The man who chose me when he could have had anyone." Their first kiss was soft, tentative, full of wonder. But as the night progressed, passion bloomed between them like flowers opening to the sun. They moved together with a naturalness that surprised them both, as if they had been created for this moment, for each other. "I feel like I'm dreaming," Sujin whispered against his ear as they lay entwined afterward, moonlight streaming through the windows. "If this is a dream, I never want to wake," Jihan replied, stroking her hair. "For the first time in my life, I feel complete." They made love again as dawn approached, with a desperation born of knowing that their secret couldn't last forever. The court would discover their marriage soon, and there would be consequences. But in those precious hours, they existed in a world of their own making, where love was the only law that mattered. 3 months later, the palace was in an uproar. "It's impossible," declared the royal physician, staring at the results of his examination. "Your Highness, according to every test we've conducted, you should not be able to father children. And yet..." Sujin sat quietly on the examination table, her hand protectively over her still flat stomach, a serene smile playing on her lips. The morning sickness had started 2 weeks ago, followed by other unmistakable signs. But it was the physician's confirmation that made it real. "And yet, I am with child," she finished calmly. "3 children, according to your examination." "Triplets," Jihan breathed, his voice filled with wonder. He had been pacing the room like a caged tiger, but now he stopped, staring at his wife with an expression of pure awe. 3 babies. The physician shook his head in bewilderment. "In 30 years of practice, I have never seen anything like this. It's as if something awakened in your Highness, something that was always there but needed the right catalyst." Jihan and Sujin exchanged a meaningful look. They both remembered her words from that first night in the garden. Sometimes what physicians consider impossible, nature considers merely dormant. "Love," Sujin said softly. Love was the catalyst. The news spread through the palace like wildfire. The crown prince, who had been declared essentially sterile, was not only married, but expecting triplets with his mysterious bride. The court was divided between celebration and scandal. Celebration for the miraculous heirs, scandal over the secret marriage to a commoner. "The council demands an audience," Minister Park announced grimly when he arrived at Jihan's chambers that evening. "They are displeased with the circumstances of your marriage." "Let them be displeased," Jihan replied, his arm protectively around Sujin's shoulders. "I have given the kingdom what they demanded. Heirs. How I achieved that is my concern. Your Highness, with respect, the bloodline must be pure. A commoner bride, no matter how fertile, cannot what?" Jihan's voice was dangerously quiet. "Cannot love me. Cannot give me children when noble wives could not. Cannot bring joy and purpose to my life when years of duty brought only emptiness." Sujin placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Jihan, perhaps we should hear what they propose." "They propose annulment," Minister Park said bluntly. "You would keep the children, of course, but take a proper noble wife. The herb girl would be compensated for her service." The silence that followed was deafening. Jihan's eyes blazed with a fury that made the minister step back. "Get out," Jihan said, his voice deadly calm. "Get out before I forget that you are my father's advisor and remember only that you have insulted my wife." When they were alone, Sujin turned to face her husband. "Jihan, maybe they're right. Maybe I should..." "Don't." He cupped her face in his hands, his eyes intense. "Don't you dare suggest leaving me. You are my wife, the mother of my children, the love of my life. I would rather abdicate the throne than live without you. But the kingdom will have to accept that their future king chose love over politics. Our children will be raised knowing that their parents defied the world for each other. What greater legacy could we give them?" The formal announcement came during the spring festival, 3 months into Sujin's pregnancy. The entire court gathered in the grand hall, its golden pillars draped with silk banners in royal blue and gold. Hundreds of lanterns cast warm light over the assembled nobles, their silk hanboks creating a sea of colour. Jihan stood on the raised platform, resplendent in his formal crown prince attire. Beside him, Su Jin wore a hanbok of deep purple silk with gold embroidery, the colors of the royal family. Her pregnancy was beginning to show, a gentle curve that spoke of the miracle growing within her. "Noble families of the kingdom," Jihan began, his voice carrying clearly through the vast hall. "I stand before you today, not just as your crown prince, but as a man who has discovered that true strength comes not from following tradition, but from following one's heart." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was not the speech they had expected. 3 months ago, I married the woman I love. Today, I present to you my wife, Crown Princess Su Jin, and announce that she carries the future of our dynasty. 3 children who will be born from a union of true love. The hall erupted. Some nobles cheered, moved by the romantic story and the promise of heirs. Others whispered in shock and disapproval. But Jihan continued, his voice rising above the noise. "I know some question this marriage because my wife was not born to nobility. But I ask you, what is true nobility? Is it the accident of birth or the content of character? Is it the ability to recite genealogies or the wisdom to heal and nurture? Is it following rules blindly or having the courage to write new ones?" He turned to Su Jin, taking her hand. "This woman taught me that love is not a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be embraced. She showed me that sometimes the greatest service to the kingdom is to choose authenticity over expectation. Through her love, I have become not just a better prince, but a better man." "And what of the bloodline?" called out Duke Cho, one of the most conservative nobles. "What of purity?" Su Jin stepped forward, her voice clear and strong. "Honored Duke, I may not have noble blood, but I carry noble children. I may not know court etiquette, but I know how to love unconditionally. I may not have wealth, but I have given the kingdom what all your politics could not. Heirs born of genuine love and joy." She placed her hand on her growing belly. "These children will know their father not as a distant figure of duty, but as a man who chose love over convention. They will learn that true leadership comes from the heart, not from fear or obligation. Is that not a worthy legacy for future rulers?" The hall fell silent. Then, slowly, one person began to clap. Then another. Soon, the applause was thunderous, led by the younger nobles who had grown tired of rigid traditions. King Lee Hyunwoo, Jihan's father, rose from his throne. The hall fell silent again, waiting for the royal judgment. "My son," the king said, his voice carrying the weight of years and wisdom, "you have surprised me. When the physicians told me you could not father children, I grieved for the end of our line. When you married in secret, I was angry at your defiance. But now," he looked at Su Jin, then back at his son. "Now I see that you have not just saved our dynasty, you have transformed it. You have shown that a true king rules not through fear or tradition, but through love and courage." The king stepped down from his throne and approached the couple. "Crown Princess Su Jin," he said formally, "I welcome you to our family. May your children inherit their father's courage and their mother's wisdom." Epilogue. The Garden of 3 Moons. 1 year later. The palace gardens had never been more beautiful. Cherry blossoms drifted like snow through the warm spring air, carpeting the paths in pink and white petals. In the center of the secret garden, where Jihan and Su Jin had first met, a new pavilion had been built, the Garden of 3 Moons, named for their 3 children. Princess Lee Minji, Prince Lee Minho, and Princess Lee So-young lay on silk blankets under the pavilion, their tiny hands reaching for the colorful mobiles hanging above them. At 6 months old, they were already showing distinct personalities. Minji was contemplative like her father. Minho was adventurous and bold, and So-young was gentle and wise like her mother. Su Jin sat beside them, her hanbok of soft green silk spread around her like flower petals. She was singing a lullaby her grandmother had taught her, her voice mixing with the sound of wind chimes and flowing water from the nearby stream. Jihan approached quietly, not wanting to disturb the peaceful scene. In his hands, he carried a small jade box, a gift he had been saving for this moment, their first wedding anniversary. "They're growing so fast," he said softly, settling beside his family. "Too fast," Sujin agreed, smiling as little Minho grabbed her finger with surprising strength. "Soon they'll be walking, then running through these gardens like their father once did." "I have something for you," Jihan said, presenting the jade box. "For our anniversary." Inside was a delicate necklace of jade and pearls, but it was the pendant that made Sujin gasp. A tiny herb garden carved in jade, complete with miniature plants, and a small figure of a woman kneeling among them. "It's us," she whispered, tears forming in her eyes. "The night we met." "The night my life truly began," Jihan corrected, fastening the necklace around her neck. "I wanted you to have something that would remind you that love can bloom in the most unexpected places." "As if I could ever forget," she laughed, leaning into his embrace. "Look at what grew from that first meeting. Not just our children, but a new way of thinking about love and duty. Indeed, their marriage had changed more than just their own lives. Young nobles throughout the kingdom had begun choosing love over arrangement, and the court had slowly adapted to value character over bloodline. The kingdom was stronger for it, more united, more hopeful. "Do you ever regret it?" Jihan asked, a question that had haunted him despite their happiness. "Giving up your simple life for all this complexity?" Sujin looked around at the palace gardens, then at their children, then into her husband's eyes, those same intense, tender eyes that had captured her heart in this very spot. "Jihan," she said softly, "I didn't give up my simple life. I found my true life. Love isn't about the setting or the circumstances. It's about finding the person who makes you want to be the best version of yourself." She gestured to their children, who were now sleeping peacefully in the dappled sunlight. "And look what we created together. Not just 3 beautiful babies, but a new story for the kingdom. A story that says love conquers all, that authenticity is more powerful than tradition, that sometimes the greatest strength is found in vulnerability." As if summoned by their parents' voices, little Minji opened her eyes and looked directly at them, her gaze wise beyond her. She reached up with tiny fingers, and both parents leaned down to let her touch their faces. "She has your eyes," Sujin whispered. "But your spirit," Jihan replied. "They all do. Strong, beautiful, unafraid to love completely." The sun was setting over the palace, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Lanterns began to flicker to life throughout the gardens, creating the same magical atmosphere that had witnessed their first meeting, their first kiss, their first declaration of love. "I love you, Crown Princess Sujin," Jihan said, using her formal title with playful reverence. "And I love you, my impossible prince," she replied, using the nickname she had given him during her pregnancy, when the physicians continued to marvel at the miracle of their children. As night fell over the palace, the family remained in their garden sanctuary, surrounded by the flowers that had brought them together and the love that had transformed a kingdom. The 3 babies slept peacefully, unaware that they were the living proof that sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with the words "impossible" and end with "miracle." In the distance, the sound of Gayagiyam drifted from the palace halls, playing a melody that had become known throughout the kingdom as the Song of 3 Moons, a composition Jihan had written for his wife and children, a musical love letter that captured the magic of a love that had defied all odds. And in the Garden of 3 Moons, under stars that had witnessed the birth of legends, a family born of impossible love continued to write their extraordinary story, one day at a time. The end. Love is not about finding someone you can live with. It's about finding someone you cannot live without, and then choosing them every day, despite what the world says is possible or proper.